Can Alec regain Barry's trust, or will the damage prove irreversible? This is a tale where love is poisoned by deception and trust is shattered beyond recognition. As the tension builds, every decision holds the weight of betrayal, and the journey toward forgiveness is as perilous as it is elusive. Alec sat in the sleek, modern living room, his head resting on his hand as his mind spiraled in thoughts. The room was a testament to the high life, but despite the comfort and beauty surrounding him, Alec was far from at peace. His brow furrowed as his phone buzzed on the table next to him, shaking him out of his reverie. It was a message. He picked it up and read the text. "Honey, I'm coming home." Alec's heart skipped a beat. His fiancée, Barry, was on her way, and she wasn't supposed to be home this early. Kindra, who was nestled close to him on the sofa, had been playfully tugging at his cheeks and resting her head on his shoulder. She looked up at him, noticing the sudden change in his expression. "What's wrong, baby?" she asked, her voice soft, but the mischief in her eyes still lingering. Alec put his phone down and tried to hide his panic. "You need to get dressed and leave, Kindra," he said firmly, standing up and running a hand through his short, well-trimmed hair. Kindra pouted, still lounging on the sofa. "Why? I'm not going anywhere until you give me what I want, Alec." Her voice turned sultry as she leaned back, showing off her brightly colored miniskirt. She was beautiful, no doubt, with her plump cheeks, bright eyes, and busty figure that she flaunted in her tank top. But Alec was no longer captivated by her charms. He was gripped with fear. "I mean it, Kindra. Barry's on her way here and she cannot find you here." His voice raised a little, his patience running thin. Kindra smiled, unfazed. She got up slowly, walking towards Alec and wrapping her arms around his neck. "Why don't you just leave her? You know I love you. I don't care if she knows about us. We could be together, Alec. I'd even be your second wife if that's what it takes," she whispered, her eyes gleaming. Alec pulled away from her grasp, frustration mounting. "Kindra, we can't do this. Please let me talk to Barry and we'll figure out how to move forward. Just go for now. I'll see you tomorrow, okay?" he said, trying to stay calm but feeling the sweat beading on his forehead. His heart was pounding as he looked out the window, wondering how close Barry was. Kindra's smile faded and her expression hardened. "Are you trying to get rid of me? After all we've been through, Alec?" "No, it's not that," Alec said, almost pleading. "Just trust me. I'll fix this, but right now you need to go." Kindra sighed heavily, grabbing her purse with an annoyed toss of her head. "Fine, but don't think you can keep pushing me away. We'll talk tomorrow," she said, her voice full of warning. She headed for the door but turned to look at him one last time, her eyes lingering on his. "Don't forget to keep your promise." Alec nodded weakly, watching her leave just moments before Barry arrived. As soon as Barry walked in, Alec wiped the sweat from his face, trying to compose himself. She was as graceful as always, tall, slim, and exuding confidence. "Hey you," she said, kissing him lightly on the cheek. "Why are you sweating? You didn't just run a marathon, did you?" Alec forced a laugh. "I was exercising a bit before you got here." Barry raised an eyebrow, her lawyer instincts always sharp, but she didn't press. Instead, she sat down and started talking about her day, the cases she was working on, and her plans for their future. Alec nodded along, but his mind was elsewhere. He couldn't stop thinking about Kindra and how dangerously close he'd come to being caught. Later that night, after Barry had settled in, Alec broached a delicate topic, pretending it was just part of the conversation. They were watching a relationship show, and the subject of infidelity came up. "So, Alec began hesitantly. "What would you do if you found out I cheated?" Barry, without missing a beat, replied, "We'll cross that bridge when we get there." Her response sent a chill down Alec's spine. He knew how resolute she was, and it terrified him to think what she'd do if she found out about Kindra. That night, Alec prayed for the first time in a long while, asking God for strength and wisdom. He knew he had to end his affair with Kindra for good, but he wasn't sure how. The next day, Alec went to see Kindra after work, as promised. His heart was heavy, but he had made up his mind. When he arrived, Kindra greeted him with a sly smile. "You don't look happy to see me?" she teased, but Alec wasn't in the mood for games. "I came to talk," he said, sitting down. Kindra's smile faded. She sensed something was wrong. "I need to end this, Kindra. I can't do this anymore. I love Barry, and I'm going to be honest with her." Kindra stared at him for a moment before dropping the bombshell. "I'm pregnant, Alec." The words hit him like a sledgehammer. His world started spinning, and before he knew it, everything went black. When Alec regained consciousness, Kindra was kneeling beside him, shaking him. "Alec, wake up." He sat up, his heart still racing. "Pregnant?" he whispered, barely able to process the word. Kindra nodded, but then Alec told her everything. How he had lost his job, how Barry had threatened to leave him, and how his life was falling apart. Kindra's expression changed. She pulled away and laughed bitterly. "You're broke?" she asked, her tone suddenly cold. "Yes," Alec said, his voice weak. "Well, I was lying about the pregnancy. I just didn't want to lose you," she confessed, standing up. "But now I don't want anything to do with a poor man. You're on your own." Alec watched in shock as she threw him out of her apartment. As the door slammed behind him, he felt a strange mixture of relief and sorrow. Kindra was gone, but so was the chaos she had brought into his life. Alec spent the next few weeks trying to regain a sense of normalcy in his life. He had cut all ties with Kindra and was determined to focus on his relationship with Barry. But despite his best efforts, a nagging sense of unease followed him everywhere. He knew that no matter how hard he tried to pretend, the lie he had kept from Barry, that there had ever been an affair at all, was like a ticking time bomb. His sleepless nights returned, and the weight of his guilt felt unbearable. Barry, ever perceptive, had started to notice the changes in Alec's demeanor. She had always been the strong, rational one in their relationship, but the distance growing between them was unsettling. One night, as they sat together on the couch, Barry broke the silence. "Alec, what's been bothering you?" "You've been distracted for weeks now," she said, her eyes searching his face for answers. She reached out to hold his hand, her touch gentle but filled with concern. Alec's heart pounded in his chest. He had promised himself that he would never lie to Barry again, yet here he was, harboring a secret that could destroy everything. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his confession rise in his throat. "There's something I need to tell you," Alec began, his voice barely above a whisper. He couldn't meet her gaze. "It's about Kindra." Barry's face tightened at the mention of the name. She had known of Kindra, a former colleague of Alec's, but never imagined the depth of their involvement. Alec continued, "I wasn't honest with you before. Kindra and we had an affair." The words hung in the air like a dark cloud, and for a moment, Barry was silent. The room seemed to freeze, and Alec could feel the weight of her stare on him. When she finally spoke, her voice was low but steady. "How long?" she asked, her calmness unnerving. "For a few months," Alec admitted. "It's over now. It's been over for a while, but I should have told you the truth from the start. I'm so sorry, Barry. I never wanted to hurt you." Barry stood up, turning her back to him as she walked to the window. The city lights flickered in the distance, but her mind was elsewhere, racing through the months they had spent together, memories now tainted by his betrayal. She clenched her fists, fighting to stay composed, but the hurt was evident in her eyes when she finally turned to face him. "I don't even know what to say right now," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You lied to me, Alec. You made me believe we had something real, but all along you were with her." Tears filled Alec's eyes as he knelt before her, reaching for her hand. "I love you, Barry. You're the only one I've ever truly loved. I made a terrible mistake, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you let me." Berry pulled her hand away, shaking her head. "I need some time, Alec. I can't just forget this." She walked to the bedroom, leaving Alec sitting alone in the silence, his heart breaking as he realized how deeply he had wounded the woman he loved. Days turned into weeks, and the tension between Alec and Berry grew unbearable. Berry had distanced herself emotionally and physically, avoiding conversations about their relationship. They still shared the same home, but it felt like they were worlds apart. Alec had never felt so alone, and he feared he had lost her for good. One evening, as Alec was sitting at the kitchen table staring at his untouched dinner, Berry entered the room. She had been at work all day, and the weariness in her eyes was evident, but there was something different about her tonight. She didn't look at him with the same cold detachment that had been present since his confession. Instead, there was a flicker of resolve in her gaze. "We need to talk," she said, her voice firm but not harsh. Alec looked up, his heart leaping in his chest. "Of course," he replied, his voice filled with hope but laced with fear. Berry sat across from him, her hands clasped on the table. She took a deep breath before speaking. "I've had a lot of time to think about everything. About us. What you did hurt me more than I can put into words. But I've also come to realize that I can't live in this limbo forever. We either need to fix this, or we need to go our separate ways." Alec's stomach dropped at the thought of losing her. "I don't want to lose you, Berry. I've made so many mistakes, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right." Berry nodded slowly. "I believe you, Alec. I've seen how hard you've been trying, and I know you regret what happened. But regret isn't enough. Trust is broken, and without trust, we have nothing." Alec's throat tightened as he nodded. "I understand, Berry. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn your trust again. I'll go to counseling. We can go together. Anything you need." Berry's gaze softened, and she let out a long sigh. "I don't know if counseling will fix everything, but I'm willing to try. I love you, Alec. That hasn't changed. But I need you to understand that this isn't going to be easy. I need time, and I need to see that you're truly committed to rebuilding what we've lost." Tears welled up in Alec's eyes as he reached across the table, gently taking her hands in his. "I am, Berry. I'll spend the rest of my life proving it to you if that's what it takes. I love you more than anything." Berry squeezed his hands, her own eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Then let's try, Alec. Let's try to rebuild this." That night, for the first time in weeks, they sat together on the couch, holding each other in a tentative but hopeful embrace. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was a start. Both knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but they were ready to face it together. The foundation of their love had been shaken, but it hadn't crumbled entirely. In the quiet of their home, as they held each other close, Alec and Berry knew that this was the beginning of their journey toward healing. Together, they would rebuild the trust that had been lost and rediscover the love that had once bound them so tightly. For the first time in a long while, Alec felt hope. This is a tale of valuing relationships, faithfulness, and the importance of integrity. It shows that cheating will only bring ruin and heartache, but redemption is always possible if one is willing to turn back to the right path. If you enjoyed the story, like the video, comment on what you learned, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more enchanting tales like this one. Thank you. But wait, there's more adventure just around the corner. Our next tale is filled with even more excitement, mystery, and lessons you won't want to miss. Scroll down to the next video to continue the journey and let the next chapter unfold before your eyes. See you in the next story.